Good evening. My name is Eva Hutt. I'm a member of Congregation Road of Shalom and Together Colorado's Housing Justice Committee. I care about housing because I want everyone to have the opportunity to live in the kind of neighborhood I do. I'm walking distance from my synagogue, bus stop, and grocery store, and my neighborhood is mixed use. Within 2 blocks, there's a small apartment building, some condos, single-unit houses, 2 office buildings, and a nice little shopette. I could not afford to buy my home today. I'm close to East Colfax, Denver's most diverse neighborhood, where the risk of displacement and gentrification is extreme and occurring. Our social justice team, Road Fade Tzedek, works on housing because it impacts our East Colfax neighbors and members of this congregation. Young families who can't afford to live here, people with sudden health issues at risk for foreclosure, people with disabilities priced out of the rental market. So we would like to know, in the past, Denver's zoning codes were used to separate communities by race, class, and culture. These relics of redlining persist and continue to harm our city. Understanding that zoning allows but does not require certain types of structures, how would you change current zoning codes to encourage all neighborhoods to have multiple housing options, such as single-family homes, duplexes, apartments, and income-restricted affordable homes, while also preventing displacement?
Kelly, you're up first.
Like you and so many families in Denver today, we probably couldn't afford to live in the home that we live in. I'm going to give you 3 examples of specific actions I would take to try to address this issue. But I want to start by saying today, Denver has become whiter and wealthier in the last 15 years. And we have to be intentional if we're going to change that and have a sustainable city that embraces everybody who works here being able to live here. Here's some of the steps I would take. First, I believe we need to really focus where we build around where we've made investments in transit. We know we should have more density around transit. It starts to address the previous question we talked about of air quality, water usage, transportation. And so focusing on that, I would not only help support the building of it there, but I would speed up our permitting process so it costs less once we build it, and we can reduce some of those costs associated with it. Secondly, I am a huge believer in home ownership. This is how families build wealth. Today, we know in Colorado, 41% of our Black families own a home versus 75% of our white families. In Denver, we have the opportunity to change that reality. I would build the housing that would help in every single neighborhood allow people to own homes again. I would focus on publicly owned parking lots. I got the chance to tour this actually in Munich. They built 100 affordable units, condos, if you will, for sale. And when you build it on a parking lot that we own, it's like land banking or a land trust, and it starts to make it affordable immediately. We have parking lots throughout the city in every neighborhood. I want you to think about our libraries, our police stations, our firehouses, our rec centers. If I could partner with Denver Public Schools, RTD, and we start to build a for-sale, more dense product again that allows families to live in neighborhoods they never could have afforded and our kids to go to schools they never could have accessed. I would also focus on making it easier to build accessory dwelling units so families could actually have income on properties they're in and reduce the gentrification we see today. I'm also interested in master leasing, which allows the city to help buy down the price of rent, but also be the first phone call before someone's evicted, so we can try to reduce and prevent people from becoming unhoused and instead keeping them housed.
Thank you.
I got that done in the
Thank you. Mike.
Okay, hang on to your hats. This is 3 big ideas in 2.5 minutes, so I'll try to go as fast as I can, but housing is incredibly important. If you're talking about how you're going to combat both affordability, gentrification and displacement, then there are three things we have to do. One is affordable rentals. So first of all, what I would do is build 25,000 units that are permanently affordable to renters. That comes as a result of your support. Together Colorado helped back our effort last year to pass Proposition 123. That puts in resources we can use to build affordable housing. What this would do is mean that if you make $80,000 or $90,000 or $100,000 or less, you could get access to one of these units, and in these units, you never have to pay more than 30% of what you make. So if you are a first-year teacher who makes $40,000 a year, you don't have to pay more than $1,000 a month in rent. And your rent never goes up unless your income goes up. And that is deed restricted to be true for that unit forever. I don't care if a new landlord comes in and buys the place, can't jack up the rent 3 months later. That is the long-term protections we need for affordability on renting. The second is on home ownership, and this is where the biggest gaps around equity exist in our city and around the country. This is why I led the effort 2 years ago to start a fund called the Deerfield Fund, which was focused on closing the gap around Black home ownership. Right now, we know the biggest gap in opportunity home ownership is around families who don't have access to down payment. When you have systematically denied communities the ability to build wealth and pass on wealth for 400 years, it is not surprising they don't have access to $50,000 to be able to make a down payment. And so by just intervening to allow families to have access to down payment assistance, you have the income, you have the credit, you don't have a down payment to get into that home, you can open up the possibility of building wealth, and you can actually, for a family, close the entire wealth gap in 7 to 10 years. A wealth gap 400 years in the making, you can close in 7 to 10 years, helping family get access to home ownership. The third is community wealth building. We also have to stop the process you all alluded to earlier, which is we have communities that have been underserved for a long time. In comes a big developer, builds a bunch of stuff, they get rich, and all the families that live there get pushed out. What I would push for is a structure called neighborhood investment trusts, where you could allow those communities to own those developments. If Denver owns the land, we put land into the deal. All of our ownership of the land, say it's 30% of the deal.